on Thursday, June 11th. And if you would mind joining us for the pledge. Dr. Gibson, would you mind sharing? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Sorry, I muted myself there. All right, thank you. And Dr. Gibson, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to do some housekeeping here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. So I want to start by making sure that everybody has an idea of the agenda and what to expect. With a large group, we've hit our 100 people. It's important that we have a good idea of where we're going. First and foremost, this meeting is for feedback on the bond that the school board intends to put forth for a vote, the bond call for November 2020. Essentially, the school system has a comprehensive educational facilities plan in which the school system lays out the expected expenditures, where they expect to build and renovate and our facilities. So I am going to briefly show you the existing CEFP that we started in 2018 and have had many community work groups working on, that was amended this past year, 2019-20. And then we're going to move into a discussion. Ms. White is going to present briefly on how we worked with the architect and our staff to get feedback on some modifications that might be responsive to the pandemic and to some of the changes that are being expected in schools. And then I'm going to post up and screen share a list for you of things that we're considering looking at amending on that bond call before we put it out. Anyone who wishes to have some degree of public comment, with this large a group, we can't have everyone with their mics turned on. So anyone who wishes to have a public comment, the chat is set up so that it comes to me as the moderator. And if you send me a message in the chat that you wish to speak, then I will unmute you. In the meantime, we would like to ask that people keep themselves muted unless they are speaking. Otherwise, the feedback makes it difficult for everyone to hear. Okay? So the first thing that I'm going to screen share with everyone quickly is the projects that were approved for the original 2018 bond call with some updates. This document was essentially the original bond call projects that we were involved in as a school system, and we were interested in making sure that we had sufficient funding and expertise in all of these areas. So there were a number of projects that we started out with, including retrofitting every bathroom in the county, replacing playground equipment, bleachers, fields. There are some things that we went back in 2019-20 and made some adjustments on. Okay, some of the things that you see, athletic vans at the high school, floor scrubbers, grab and go breakfast kiosks, we removed those at the time in the interest of funding other projects that we felt like were more immediate. Now, this document is up on our website. It is in board docs, and it is up under CEFP. so you could go at any time and see all of these. If you'll look at the elementary school immediate needs projects, every single school had some improvement work that was recommended in each one of those. Some of these you'll notice from our beginning in 2018 when we started until now, we've made some modifications on. For instance, TA Lowry, you will see metal roof replacement on there. We removed that because we were able to write a grant to the school building authority and get $1 million to replace the HVAC in that building. So originally that figure was $1.8 million more, but we were able to take that out of the CEFP because we were able to get grant money for it. So that helped tremendously. So what we changed on the last bond call, the last edit of it, is that we had removed the Shepherdstown Elementary School roof from the previous one, because if we're getting a brand new Shepherdstown Elementary School, it doesn't make a lot of sense to put a brand new roof on one that we will not be utilizing that far into the future. We added an awning at CW Shipley, which was an additional request. We added an auxiliary gym at Washington High School. We added the conversion of the Jefferson High football game stadium field from grass to turf. We added putting an athletic field, a game field, and a practice field at Wildwood Middle School. That is actually in the bid stage currently as we speak. We added renovation and development of the Paige Jackson room. For those of you who may not be aware, the school board office is located in our historic Paige Jackson High School, which was the segregated high school for Jefferson County. And we have a museum inside of there that's dedicated to those individuals and to their achievements, and to our responsibility to them and ourselves not to forget that part of our past and to maintain our pledge to do better moving forward. And we had asked for us to make that a more prominent, professional, respectful area. These were the things that we added back in February, and I happen to think they get more relevant every day. We asked for additional funding for compliant camera systems. We are currently under a legislative requirement to have audio and video camera systems operating in all of our self-contained special education classrooms at a fairly significant cost that has to come out of our operating budget if we are unable to get it in a bond. STEAM programs at our high schools, and sensory processing rooms. So those were all of the things that in February, in addition to everything that was already in the bond, were on the table. I am going to stop and turn it over to Joyce White for a moment for her to talk about the work that has been done to look at updates for COVID and the pandemic, and then I will screen share what some of those are so that we can get some feedback from folks.
Good evening. I want to thank the Board of Education for allowing the operations team the opportunity for us to participate in this town hall meeting this evening. I'm going to discuss a couple of different things this evening, and as we look to moving toward a bond, I would like to talk about safety suggestions for the students and staff that will be in our facilities. And I wanted also to provide a very welcome forum, I think we all did, in which to dialogue with community about our desire to improve, upgrade, and to build new facilities. As our school system prepares to move forward with an academically sound, future-ready instructional plan, tonight the operations team will partner with them by presenting some of our thoughts and ideas in order to be future-ready not only academically, but in our physical school settings as well. We look forward to hearing from the community again here tonight and listening to feedback. So thank you for your willingness to participate. I'm excited to discuss these opportunities with you about building future-ready schools. It's a concept our entire team embraces. We understand that our facilities should be built to last and contain considerations for today's students as well as tomorrow's students. First and foremost, we want our buildings to be a safe haven for learning. We want our students and staff focused on learning at all times. So buildings and safety are our top priority. Second, we want our schools to be comfortable. A comfortable environment promotes learning, and this can include, as we look to the future, building plenty of windows for daylight, which is a natural mood elevator for students. HVAC systems, we realize, are also important to us because they impact the comfort and provide healthy air quality for our students and staff. Energy efficiency is important as well. We recognize that there is a need to be budget conscious as we move forward so that our resources serve our community in a responsible and fiscally sound way. Today, the capability exists as we build new facilities to build net zero buildings. This means we're able to build our schools so that we save about 80% of our energy costs on an annual basis. Another important feature in our future-ready schools is to ensure we build flexible spaces. The children of today do not learn like the children of yesterday. We need to be smart about providing them spaces that will allow them to learn and allow them flexibility in a future-ready way. That includes working with all the stakeholders and all the people that will be using the building to solicit their input and how they'd like this to take place. Some of our vision includes reinventing hallways where programmatically appropriate to make them extensions of the classroom, which will allow for more collaborative learning. Incorporating the use of glass in these areas so that teachers can easily supervise collaborative groups will help facilitate the safe use of these spaces. Indoor and outdoor learning, we feel, is very important. We value that. Allowing spaces where students can be outdoors, change their environment, and stimulate the learning process. Creating STEM and STEAM rooms, which has already begun in our school system in several schools, for shared learning experiences is another way to engage our future-ready learners. Technology integration has become critical, especially in the past few months. So we want to plan and have well thought out technology, and that will be part of our vision. One simple way to do that in a new building would be to have the cabling ready, not only for today, but for tomorrow. Another aspect to consider in funding meaningful ways to connect with the community is for actually creating and carving out some space for the community that invites their participation. We could do this in a couple of ways by creating a walking trail, creating a picnic area that might include Wi-Fi at times, or even adding a fitness trail. While everything is tied to budget, we look forward to setting our priorities by beginning the conversation this evening. As Dr. Gibson has mentioned, we did, in building the CEFP, hold several public forums, which we invited people in to solicit their ideas, many of which are included in our CEFP. Together, we want to move forward for the success of our children's future. This evening, representing operations, I'd like to introduce to you Randy Jones. He is our architect for our Comprehensive Facilities Educational Plan, otherwise known as the CEFP. And Randy, if you'd give a little wave or say hello, please, so they know who you are. Thank you. And Brandon Caton, our coordinator of maintenance. Brandon, if you could just give a little hello so we know where you are. These people have been very instrumental in helping create and generate ideas and listen to ideas for the plan. This evening, we'd like to focus also on some safety updates we'd like to include in our CEFP based on our pandemic and things we feel will make our schools future ready. Dr. Gibson, if you'd like to display our updates. So one of the ideas we have is to take our current water fountains and convert them to water bottle fill. We feel that students should be well hydrated, and getting drinks out of a water fountain doesn't serve their hydration needs as well as just having them able to access water bottle stations where they can fill them up. Another idea we have is to renovate the restrooms, and I'll let Randy speak a little bit to that. We have an idea, it was on the CEFP already, but we have some ideas which could incorporate some safety features. Randy, if you want to talk about those ideas, that would be fantastic.
Sure. And some of the things we want to do when we're renovating spaces is keep in mind the current health issues that we're facing and try to provide as many touchless functions in these spaces as possible. So we'll be able to replace faucets and knobs on sinks with a automatic sensor, much like what you see out in the retail world. We'll be able to replace the flush valves with automatic sensors on the toilets and the urinals. And so those things will make a big difference in just the amount of surfaces that children will touch when they go into restrooms.
Some of our schools have, I caught it, some of our schools already have begun the process of creating a STEM or a STEAM lab. And these labs are very hands-on for students, and they're very future ready as far as creating learning spaces. So we're very excited about those. We also thought moving forward that we want to invite any virtual learners that we may have inside the building, as well as if there's any support we could provide homeschool students in any way by creating spaces that could be occupied by parent and children that would be glass spaces and materials that they could access that they wouldn't necessarily have at home. So these would go alongside of our STEM or STEAM labs. We do have on there, and you can see this is a working document, so it's not all fancy. We did have on there thermal body scanners to put in secure entryways. Secure entryways are important to us, and you know, we welcome feedback about how people feel about those in the entryways. Also moving forward, we notice in our classrooms, particularly in older schools, that we really don't have good spaces other than in middle schools or high schools where we have lockers for students to have a space just to contain their things. So we would want to look at upgrading cubbies so that, and this would be pre-K to 5. They don't just allow in schools now, as they're designed, to have space for backpacks, coats, lunches, and that sort of thing. So we would definitely like to upgrade that, perhaps with like a double-tiered locker. Touchless door openings are something we're recommending, such as in cafeterias, gyms, auditoriums, stairways, just to prevent a lot of touch, as well as automatic occupancy sensors for lights. These would go a long way in saving energy costs in our school building. Other things we've talked about are adding stripes on floors. Stripes on floors can be used for a couple reasons. In elementary schools, they're very relevant to learning, and additionally, they could be used for spacing as we go through high times of flu season or, for instance, the pandemic. Band rooms, we would like to have storage for students that could be readily sanitized. And we'd like to remove carpet in classrooms. We feel it's a lot more sanitary just in general to have tiles and carpet. You know, if you have asthma, allergies, carpet can hold a lot of those, you know, dust mites, pollen, allergens, that type of thing. So we feel that would be a very relevant upgrade for our facilities. Brandon or Randy, do you have anything to add to those edits?
No, Joyce, I think you did a great job with that.
I agree. I have nothing to add.
Okay. So those are our suggestions tonight, and Dr. Gibson, I'll turn it back over to you to gather some feedback.
Thank you very much. So a couple of you have already wisely figured out the chat feature. As we noted with this many people, appreciate the ability for us to keep everyone where everyone can hear and everyone is being heard. So I, at this time, am going to keep up all of the suggestions And here is our, you could do this one of a couple of ways. If you wish to simply have a question that you want answered privately and you don't want to ask it to everyone, type it into the chat and I will respond to it. If you would like to speak, type into the chat that you'd like to speak, and then I'll unmute your mic and you can speak to any of those options. If you have a suggestion of something that is not currently on that list that you would like considered, again, type into the chat and say, I have a suggestion. I will find your name, I'll unmute you, and then you can share with the community what your suggestion and your idea is, and we'd be happy to. So right now, I have a question from Miss S.G. Smiles, and I will pull her up out of the queue. And thank you for your patience because this takes a little bit of time. So if you could unmute yourself, Miss Smiles, and ask your question, we'd be happy to help.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. This is Shannon Smiles Tharp. I just have a question about the proposed changes related to the pandemic or the potential for additional pandemic issues or flu season, that type of thing. Would that apply to the new schools? Like, for Shepherdstown Elementary School, they're going to be building a new school if this goes through. So I'm assuming the current school, would you guys be putting the money in with these changes to the current school or waiting until the new school is built?
That is a very, very good question. I would imagine it would be a mixture. For example, when we talk about converting the water fountains to bottle fill, first and foremost, if this bond is successful, first of all, there are 2 new elementaries in it, one at Shepherdstown Elementary and then one for Ranson Elementary. And in both of those cases, from design to groundwork to build, I mean, we're talking it'll be 2 years before you going full out. It would be 2 years before anyone would be setting foot in there. So in the meantime, we still have all of these safety features. So water fountains, absolutely. We will cap water fountains and we will make them bottle fill stations. I mean, they're going to be capped regardless. Part of it, I think, would be funding issues. So when you talk about renovating the bathroom, I would be doubtful that we would recommend a gut of the bathrooms at Shepherdstown Elementary School and complete renovation of those when we're building a new school. However, we would look at proposals from the architect and say simple things like, hey, if we put, touchless hand dryers in here, can we then just take them out when we go? I mean, we would look at anything we could put in now that would not be, I don't want to say wasted money, but that we would have to leave behind that are huge investments. If we could move them, yes, we'll put them in the current Shepherdstown Elementary. Otherwise, part of this discussion is how Shepherdstown Elementary School might look very different. I, for one, believe, and we will have a lot more discussion on this. I want to be clear, this isn't the last time to talk about this, because even once we get the bond, we'll have committees of parents and community members talking about more detailed design build. But there is no reason for the Shepherdstown Elementary School of the future to look like a traditional elementary school, okay? There just isn't. We have a lot of flexibility. This community is a community that decides what they want for their children. And if they want facilities for children to be able to meet with a counselor, for, as you well know, this being your area of expertise, trauma-informed care that we have invested heavily in our school district. We're the only school system in the state now that has a social emotional support department. We now have a school social worker in every single school for service, and none of our buildings are designed with spaces for privacy and for sensory processing to help de-escalate kids and give them a space to work through some mental health issues with their counselor. That just wasn't a thing when these schools were being built. Does it need to be in our new schools moving forward? I would argue yes, but that is a question for this community. STEAM labs, let's say we have 1,000 families who decide that virtual's for them and that's what they want to do, and they want to be able to bring their kids in and out. And we have school-based project pods. We have a STEAM lab, and we say, okay, you're virtual 3-4 days a week. That flexibility works for your family, but on this day, this is your lab day. You come into our STEAM labs and you do all your project-based work. You meet with your teacher and you go on. Those are all possibilities. That's why we're having this conversation, because school doesn't have to be what was in your youth. It can be what you imagine for your kid's future, and we really want people to think about that and be excited about that. Maybe
Awesome.
not as
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, honey. Don't get me jazzed up talking about that. We'll be here all day. Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to get back to the chat feature for everyone and see who the next person is. I apologize. Hold on just a moment. There we go. Chat. Okay, I have next in line. I have a question, Ms. Miles. Okay, so 2 questions. Do you want to ask your questions yourself, Mr. Friend, or do you want to ask them to just me?
No, just, I mean, if you can just answer those. I mean, really, I'll just tell them and you can answer them back to the group. But essentially what it comes down to is, do you have any type of estimated savings on the automatic light sensors, which I think is a good thing, obviously, for our energy usage, but I didn't know if there was any type of potential savings. And obviously, if there is, you'll have to think later of what to do with that. And then the second thing would be, is there really a greater lifespan for the tile over the carpet compared to the value? Is it, I mean, obviously for allergenic reasons, I understand that, but at the same time, I want to make sure that it's obviously worthwhile to the limited budget that you have to work with.
Well, I could turn over to Mr. Jones, who's far better prepared than I to talk about potential energy savings. I can tell you, because you said sort of like, what will we do with that money? Right now, we sell energy back to the power company. We run a differential of what our energy use is up until 4 p.m. And then we do another measurement at 5 p.m. and we sell back the difference for them to use in the metro area when people are coming home from work and turning everything on and their power draw is larger. We get about $90,000 a year off of that. And we use that in our operating fund for instructional materials and supplies. So we do have some ways of already using energy savings. Now, I would love to hear from Randy whether or not we can run some type of projection on how much that savings would be.
Yes, we can look at some life cycle cost analysis for that, where we can determine what the average school use has been, electrical use has been over the past, say, 2 years, and then project the savings based on using automatic light sensors. When it comes to new schools, of course, everything will be LED lighting with multiple levels of lighting control and dimming abilities and so forth. And that's where your savings are really going to be tremendous. You can have a school, just as you said, Dr. Gibson, that will use 80% less energy than an average school. And that's already been demonstrated in the state. There's already a school in Raleigh County that is the best performing school in the state of West Virginia. So their energy costs are just minimal compared to the average school in the state. So there's definitely calculations that we can provide for that.
I want to be clear, when he says best performing, he means energy. Because if he meant anything else, it would be a school in Jefferson County. So I just want to put that out there, right, Mr. Jones?
You are absolutely correct. Energy performing.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, sir. And that's a great question on the lifespan of the tile rather than the carpet. I expect that there may be some differential, but we could include that as well. And I think these are good facts for us to be able to put out for people. I am keeping all of the notes from the chat. And so I'll put together a Q&A that we'll post up. I posted out to everyone who's in the chat. I posted out to you the link on our website for the CEFP so you can see it. When we finish this forum, I'll do all the Q&A and I'll put that in there as well so people who couldn't attend can also see it. I got a question about hand dryers and the spread of germs. And that's an interesting question because we have actually talked about that and researched it. And there are a lot of pros and cons both ways about paper towels versus hand dryers where it blows. And then there's some research that says it blows the germs, that dirty water around. Some of that is us looking at the difference between elementary, middle, and high school behavior for students as well. And some of it is staffing cost and supply cost. When you have students who, God bless their little hearts, pull out all of the paper towels, they use 27 of them, and then they put them in the toilet, and then they try to flush them, and there are other attendant worries with that. But I will tell you this, that I appreciate you asking, and one of the things that I think you can and should expect is that we give you whatever research data we use to make that decision. So if we do go with automatic hand dryers, we'll be able to say, these were the articles that we looked at that said, hey, if you keep it at least this many feet away, or if you keep it at this angle, it's better for kids. We'll use the best practice that we're aware of. We do the best that we know how at the time until we learn better, and then we try to do better. So again, if any of you have research out there as well, things that you've read or things that you've seen, please, please, these are not sermons from the mount. Send us what you have, because we're building this together. And if you've got a great idea, by all means, share it with us, and we'd love to see it.
And we do have a third idea. I think Randy could briefly discuss a third option, an idea for how to dry hands in a restroom. And that incorporates some UV lighting at a sink. Randy, do you want to touch on what we're exploring and researching in that area?
So there's been a lot of debate about hand dryers and whether or not they do, as Dr. Gibson said, blow germs around the space and so forth. So the industry is responding to that. They're incorporating UV lighting into the hand dryers. They're also lowering the velocity of the airspeed and incorporating those hand dryers directly over the sink bowl. So now we have integrated units that really will minimize the amount of water being spread around and lower the amount of air that's being distributed. And then the UV lighting will also help tremendously. So they are definitely responding to these concerns and these issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's good to know. That's good to know. I also got a question from someone who wants an idea of when these changes might happen. And again, the bond is currently scheduled for the November election vote. Should the citizens of Jefferson be supportive of that, then it's a matter of us floating the bonds, getting the funding, putting things out to bid. I would certainly say the earliest that one could expect to see any sort of like physical changes where we are starting to spend money and do the work is probably going to be next summer. There is a possibility on very small projects that we might be able to do something in late spring. But number one, kids have to not be in the building. And right now, for heaven's sake, please, God, send them. We want them in the building. We miss them. We want them back. But our build time is those brief windows of spring break and summer break. So it would probably be May, June of 2021 before you actually physically saw these things. Another question that I have is the National Coronavirus Recovery Commission will issue its report with 250 plus recommendations on June 15th. how will it be incorporated into JCS planning and funding? Fantastic question. At this point, I would say the same way that we've incorporated the CDC's last 5 recommendation reports, the West Virginia Department of Education's last 3 recommendation reports, all of which came out this week, and the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources safety reports, and the Emergency Commission reports, which are happening weekly. We hold 2 admin review meetings every single week now, and every department reports in on what information their department received and whether or not it changes any plans that we have. For instance, yesterday, we got hot off the presses from the governor, his new release on graduation. So now the graduation committee has to go back and take the new one and look at that. So we will do the exact same thing. We'll take that one, we'll sit down, and we'll do a side-by-side. Here's what CDC has said, best practice. Here's what the West Virginia Department of Ed has said. Here's what these folks have said. Is there any crossover? And then we always sit down. Yesterday, we released our safe return to play for sports. We sat down and we ran that by our local Jefferson County Health Department. They're the experts. We're educators, and quite frankly, I think we have some darn good educators. We have some of the best I've ever worked with. We're not doctors, we're not physicians. So we try to stay in our lane, learn everything that we can, and take responsibility for learning, but ultimately, we've got to listen to others and have partnerships. So as soon as we get that, we'll do as we did with the other things from the State Department. We'll post them out to our staff so that they see them. And we have a number of stakeholder groups that are working on our return to school right now. They have been for several weeks. What will virtual look like? What will our new schedules look like? How will we run specials? How will we do lunch when we don't have kids congregate in lunchrooms? All of those work groups are going, and as we get new information, we post it out to that work group and say, does this change your plan at all? Okay, from another teacher, please keep in mind that several music classrooms need rugs as an acoustic treatment. This is true for elementary through high school. If rugs are to be replaced in those locations, please replace them with appropriate acoustic flooring, not tile. This is a health safety concern. Outstanding suggestion. Thank you very much. In that same thread, Washington High School is in desperate need of lockers for our students. Both directors are forced to keep student instruments in their offices due to the lack of space for students to keep their belongings. It's a huge need. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's one of the things that we've seen, and that's one of the reasons that the suggestion was in there for band rooms for storage and for us to be able to sanitize. It has been a very difficult process. I have had to go into schools and retrieve several student instruments during this pandemic, and they've needed them to be able to perform for a college, for scholarship, or to be able to get out. So we had to go in, get the instruments, sanitize them, get them to the students. So I am even more appreciative than I would have been pre-pandemic about how helpful that would be. Another question, Washington High School is the only high school in the region without lights on its softball and baseball fields. Will this deficiency be addressed in the current CEFP? Again, that is not in the current CEFP, and that is something for the board to debate and consider. It certainly does extend the scheduling opportunities for those fields. And anytime we have a field that doesn't have lights, our students have to leave school early, and other schools students have to miss instruction because they have to leave early enough to play in the daylight instead of finishing their school day and then coming over. So certainly that's a great suggestion for adding to that. So will you make sure that that goes on the new list, Ms. White?
Yes, I wrote it down.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. So again, a great suggestion about the light sensors during code reds and fire drills. Thank you for that suggestion. That was a good one. I will make sure that our architect gets that. I have someone who is concerned that all of the changes, that they believe that there'll be a vaccine by the end of the year and we won't be voting on the bond until November, so that many of these things are unnecessary, and so they don't think that they should be included in the CEFP bond. And that is a very legitimate position. I don't know if the individual who, again, it helps me if you tell me in the chat whether or not you want to speak or you want me to bring it up, but you don't want to speak, because I don't want to speak for you. You're right. We are debating ourselves in every one of these. The body temp scans, those were an initial, hey, we should do this. And we're having the same debates internally to say how much of this are good things, just long-term, good things for hygiene, sanitation, saving money, saving energy, and an investment. Some of the things are important because they're just good for kids and for public health. COVID-19 is one thing, but Spanish flu, the Black Plague, there will be other health crises. There will be other issues. And so we're trying to sort through not overreacting to this issue, but recognizing there are always going to be safety threats to our kids in our schools and what's reasonable for us to do to keep them safe. And if anyone, again, if you want to speak, just put into the chat to me that you want to speak, and I am more than happy to lend you the mic. If you are not able to do any of these changes until next year, what is your plan to prepare the schools with the items you have planned to help with the flu pandemic prevention? Essentially, I think that question is asking, hey, if you don't get all of this money until November, what are you going to do up until then? Right now, we are, at last check, we are $30,000 deep into purchase of PPE, personal protective equipment, gloves, masks, a lot of hand sanitizer, demisting equipment. What we anticipate is, just as you saw released just yesterday from the State Department for their guide to school reentry, we are already building out checklists for, okay, if we make it a requirement that everyone washes their hands before they enter into a building, what does a hand washing station cost? How much of this will we use? The State Department has been clear, and you saw the guidelines. Children will be required to wear masks when being transported on a school bus. Required, not at this point, not voluntary, mandatory. Now, if we tell someone they have to have something to attend school, then guess what? We provide it. So right now, last count, I think it was, and Joyce will correct me if I'm wrong, we just got a delivery of 10,200 masks to our school system that the State Department provided. And so all of these things are good long-term, but we are also furiously making plans for short-term and intermediate. Right now, every water fountain in this county and all of the buildings, they're covered up. When we go into we're still working at the school board office on a rotation. When you walk in there, the water fountain's covered up. You can't get to it. So have they converted to bottle fill? No. But are we still using water fountains? No, that stopped. So we have a number of intermediate measures that we're going through as well. That was a great question. Right now, question. Shelley, would you like to ask this question, or would you like me to?
I can ask. I'm curious if there's going to be any money spent to make some of the schools Wi-Fi hotspots for kids who can't get the fast access at home?
That is a fantastic question. Fantastic question. So, two things. Yes. We did that with Washington High and Jefferson High. Our technology staff went out and boosted the Wi-Fi signal and made it more directional so that there was a section of the school where you could park in our parking lot and the Wi-Fi would extend that far. We put in extenders to be able to do that. We are looking at and testing mobile hotspots that we could put on buses. Now, a couple of things. Number one, they're costly. Number two, we still have to make them work logistically with the internet provider. So we are hoping that we have them on back order. We actually, before this whole thing hit, we had gotten a $50,000 grant from United Way to build a mobile learning lab. And we already had the design. The lab is up at James Rumsey. It's been gutted. They were already starting the install on all of the gaming features for us to be able to drive it to kids' neighborhoods, and they could do homework in it. And it had a Wi-Fi hotspot for buildings. So we'd already ordered one. We're ordering a couple more for us to do trial runs, to do pilots in different sections of the county and see how far they can extend and what kind of usage they get, and make sure that we can still keep kids safe, because the same blocking mechanisms need to work on there that work on our Wi-Fi in our schools. We can't expose kids to pornography or to predators or to, so our internet has a lot of safety features built in that we have to make sure that the mobile Wi-Fi works with those as well. So we have an utter rock star of a technology director. Cannot say enough good things about Jen Rowan. She's fantastic. Anytime we can pull off remote learning, and Fairfax with their $3 billion a year budget can't seem to manage to do it in 8 weeks. That's good staff right there. So kudos to our teachers and our IT team. But yes, we are running pilots for those mobile hotspots, and we've already extended to Wi-Fi hotspots at our high schools, and we will look at extending them in other more remote areas like South Jefferson, so people won't have to drive so far if they need to get on our Wi-Fi. Great question.
Dr. Gibson, I'll quickly add too that we're also reaching out to business partners to determine if there's some availability and willingness to support us. And we do have some folks that are interested in supporting that. I don't want to share their names because we're still working through some of the logistics of the filtering, some of those elements that we're required to, but we are also exploring that option.
Great. Okay, again, anyone who wants to either offer another suggestion or to give feedback on a suggestion that has already been offered, please just type to me in the chat room, and more than happy to have you speak. I will also say, while we're waiting for folks to type, number one, this is not the last forum that we'll have. We are actually looking at having these town hall public forums on our off weeks from board meetings, so that we have more opportunities to engage people in discussion about the things that are concerning for them. We had, and I will say it's wonderful to see all of the participation. We had four public meetings, like out in the schools, in the community, open house, advertise them, and we had less than a quarter of the people who were on this one meeting came to all 4 meetings collectively. I think people like it not disrupting their life and their family. Your kids are back there doing the homework, and you can still be a good citizen. I did get the question, is there a better platform we could use to allow for more than 100 participants? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will right now publicly in front of my board take full responsibility. Our technology director, Jennifer Rowan, came to me and said, hey, you know that that Zoom is limited, our Zoom education account is limited to 100 participants. If you want to get more than 100 people into this, then we need to hurry up and see if we can pay this fee and have them extend it beyond 100 and get that into place. Full honesty, I said we had 4 public meetings and I didn't have 25 people show at all 4 public meetings. What are the chances that I'm going to get over 100 people who are going to come? And that was me. So next time, obviously, we'll just spend the money and pay to extend it past 100 people because we've hit our 100-person max. And that's me learning every single day. So, okay, I got a question that said, I don't want to talk, just ask the question. With the water fountains being blocked off, will the school be providing bottles of water to students? Excellent question. Joyce is smiling because she sent me last week a variety of price quotes from vendors on Jefferson County Public Schools water bottles for us to provide to every kid with a place for them to put their name on it and personalize it so that they had their own water bottles and we didn't have cross-contamination. Yes, I think that is exactly where we're going to end up. Whether we give them to every single kid or we say, bring your own, and if you don't have one, we'll give you one. We will have to provide water to kids. That's a health and safety issue. How we do it, there's been talk about, well, if we don't want to have to wash all of those water bottles, do we do paper cups? Which then we have 9,000 students. 9,000 paper cups a day is a lot. So probably looking more at the water bottle option. Again, if anybody has strong feelings about that one way or the other, then by all means, we will certainly hear them. We are more than open. But yes, we will be providing them either paper cups of water, water bottles. Absolutely, they will get water because it's essential. That's non-negotiable. Okay, so again, a citizen says their son is in high school and that their friends all have cell service and their middle school child and elementary school kids can't take their phones to school, so they don't see the need for Wi-Fi spots on the buses. Understandably, I don't anticipate, and the idea isn't that we put Wi-Fi on every single bus. The idea is that we would take a handful of buses and we put Wi-Fi on those. And when kids were required to stay home and do virtual, let's say there was a state mandated shutdown, or let's say we've got a community that doesn't have as good an access to internet, we could just drive that bus up into the neighborhood, make an announcement, let people know we would be there, and they could come to the bus. The idea is not that every bus would have Wi-Fi and all of the kids would be using it every day. That would not be the purpose. I got a suggestion that if we provide water bottles for each student, we make sure they fit under the bathroom faucets for kids for filling. That's smart. That's a good idea. Remember that, Randy, water bottles have to fit under the bathroom faucets.
Yes.
That's a great idea. We'd get big water bottles and they wouldn't fit and it'd be a mess. Okay. Will Chromebooks be provided to every student due to this pandemic and possible virtual schooling? Excellent, excellent question. Right now, we have laptops to bridge what we would call a digital divide, meaning we've surveyed parents and families and asked, do you have internet? Do you have device? If you have a device, what devices do you have? How many do you have? How many people are using them? And we have been furiously acquiring through grant funding and through federal funding flexibility. We just purchased, as you probably read in the paper, 1,000 Chromebooks. Now the focus of that were kids who do not have any access. At this point, we do not have enough Chromebooks to hand to every single child. For example, my son is very blessed with a very generous grandmother, and he happens to have a Chromebook. So I wouldn't need one. He would use his personal one. So right now, do we have 9,000 of those? No, we do not. We do have enough to cover the individuals who, when we surveyed them, they said, I do not have access to a device. We are also working with the West Virginia Department of Education and working with them on a federal grant to provide more. The state actually, of the COVID funding that people are talking about, the State Department, West Virginia Department of Education got 9 million of that. And they have said they will be parsing that out to schools based on application and need. One of their priorities is digital equity. So if we can show that we have any inequities in access, they will help us cover that as well. So we are working towards that, and we have enough for the gap. We just don't have enough for one-to-one for absolutely everybody. Great question. Next chat comment. Let's not forget preschoolers and kindergartners can't always recognize their name. Personalized water bottles are great, but don't forget about that. And see, this is why teamwork makes the dream work. I was a middle school person, so yes, 3 and 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds sometimes have difficulty with that. So we may well need to look at ones with colors, or ones that we can, actually, you know what, Joyce? Ones with like those plastic sleeves on the outside that I've seen, where we could slide their picture down into them maybe, so they could see them. So that's a great suggestion. We'll talk with the preschool and kindergarten teachers too. We may end up getting different kinds for younger versus older children. Next one. We can install bottle stations and backfill funding with bond and more one-to-one devices. So yes, meaning there are certain things, the person who wrote this very wisely understands school funding. Our school board has the authority to commit funding to do things now. Let's say this school board said $80,000 non-negotiable. We need to convert those water fountains now. And then when the bond is voted on, we'll get the money back. Okay, we'll put it back in our coffers. So we'll take $80,000 from what we were going to spend on, school supplies, and we'll do that conversion. And then when that money comes in from the bond, we can backfill it. They do have that option. There is a risk in that you have to be fairly confident that your community is going to vote for those things, or you've expended those funds and they don't come back until you do get a bond. I did get a comment about someone who's uncertain that filling water bottles in a public bathroom sink might not be our highest priority. But anyway, again, there are no bad ideas. Throw them out. That's what this is for. And I actually love this forum because people will put things in there that are just crazy ideas, that are great crazy ideas that they might not be willing to stand up and raise their hand and say. And we get some of the best ideas this way. It's fantastic. Next question. What about within the school? iPads and computers that are shared within the school will not work for the upcoming school year with the contained classroom. Yes, absolutely. What this teacher is talking about, this employee is talking about, is we have computer labs oftentimes that children share. We will not be able to do that under the new guidelines. Children will be staying in pods. That being the case, again, as someone advocated for several years ago when she first came here, don't build computer labs. Buy laptop carts, because with those, what we can do is we can roll a laptop cart into a room. The students can use them. We can pull the cart out. We can mist it and sanitize it, dry it, and then move it to another classroom. So we have the capability of serial use whereas labs are just a nightmare. Oh, great suggestion. You could consider disposable sleeves or covers for keyboards and computer mouses, mice. We'll investigate that. That has not been brought up as a possibility. We will put that on the list to research. Trust and believe, we will take any and all great ideas as we work through this with you. So it's coming up on 8 o'clock. Want to make sure that I give everybody every opportunity to speak and to come in. Okay, I have one more. What will be done with the computers now in the lab? That is a great question. That will depend heavily on the configuration of our classrooms. We will likely take those computers and we'll disperse them into classrooms because the teachers will need them for rotations. They're still going to be doing centers. They're still going to be doing computer work, but they're not going to be taking kids out and taking them into a lab and then another class coming in. So we would probably, let's say we have 30 computers, we take and put 3 each in 10 different classrooms, so they have a set of those computers. Again, doing that takes enormous manpower. I mean, just think the last time you got a new computer and tried to hook it up in your office. Then imagine taking 30, 50, 60 at a school, unplugging, moving, all of them, putting them back in, putting them back together. So there are some limitations to that, but we would use them. Okay. We got a question about what happens when kids lose water bottles, because they will. Yeah, we're gonna have to have extra water bottles, and then we're gonna have to talk to parents that, you know, your kid lost their water bottle, can you please send another one in? And we have the same thing now. We buy a lot of pencils, we buy a lot of paper. You know, most kids, they do the best that they can, and we try not to punish them for being kids, and we cover them. And if it becomes exorbitant, then we'll, you know, one kid loses 2 of them, and then we go have a conversation with their parent and say, this is your last one, you've really got to hold it together. But our IT director reminding me that some of our computers are 10 years old and we need to replace them. She's entirely correct. Point taken. Moving as promptly as we can to replace those on a cycle, and which is part of why it's very important for us to get this bond passed and get this funding so that we can do everything that we want and need to do for kids. Okay, I got a question, and I knew this would come. Outside of the bond, that if West Virginia students are not in school all 5 days per week, what provisions for childcare will be instituted for parents that must work? I will say right now, we are all asking that question, even the childcare providers, about what provisions the state is going to make for them for licensing, because they are under many of the same restrictions that we are about number of children per provider and number of children in a space. And so if we're only in school 4 days per week and we have to close, if we're required to close 1 day per week for deep cleaning, which is currently West Virginia Department of Education stance, that's 1 extra day a week that local child care providers would be needed. Right now, they have not released any additional guidance on that. And we're very supportive of our local child care providers. And they have not issued any guidance on how flexible they're going to be with them to have increases 1 day per week. So that is not a decided issue yet, but it is definitely one that needs to be addressed. You are absolutely right. Next great question. Assume there has been a significant daily operational cost savings by having facilities closed down during the pandemic. How is that savings being reappropriated? Great question. Well, the first thing that we're trying to do is actually capture that information. So we're doing comparisons of our power bills from month to month. And when I say month to month, not necessarily February to March to April, but March of this year versus March of last year, how much less did we spend? April of this year versus April of last year, how much less did we spend? And our diesel expenditures, how much less did we spend not having to go around and pick up kids versus how much more did we have to spend because we are now feeding a significantly increased number of meals to individuals who qualify for food from us, how much increase we've spent. As I noted, when we did the tally the other day when we were doing our comparisons, we've spent $30,000 on PPE. We didn't used to have to buy, Tyvek suits and 288 gallons at a time of hand sanitizer and misters. So what we're doing, because we are hopeful that the state will help us cover some of these expenses, is that we're coding our expenses for COVID-19 pandemic response separately so that we can pull those out and look at how much more we've had to spend in some areas and how much less in others. We spent more because we had to buy a lot more laptops, but we didn't spend as much on paper. We are just now getting those numbers in. Even we're just now starting to get the power bills in to compare from those. It seems like a long time, but it's really only been a couple of months. But as we go through that, when we get the final tally of additional costs and savings, we'll do that report out to the board and show them if we came out ahead or behind and where we anticipate spending that money. That's a great, great question. Great question. Ooh, okay. Will the kids have to have PE, choir, and art come to them, especially in elementary school? Yes, right now, the guidance that we've received from WVDE is that they want kids staying in pods. They do not want them traveling outside of their pods, and they want us to limit their exposure to different surfaces, meaning I can't take you into the art room and then take you out and then bring another class in and they've touched everything that you touched. Right now, I anticipate, we haven't decided, that it will be more of a, I'm the art teacher, I've got my mask, I've got my gloves, I've got my supplies, I go into this classroom, I do this activity, I bring my card out, I sanitize my cart, I get new gloves, I get face mask, and then I go into, I'm cleaned, I wash up, and then I go into the next classroom and with a separate set of fresh supplies. Right now, that's the thinking based on the guidance and the limitations that we've been given by WVDE. Okay, lunch, PE, those kind of things are a little more complicated, but we're working through them. We're working through them. Next question, seating in classrooms and groups, is that okay? Flexible seating, okay? Right now, the word that we're getting is once we place students in pods, that having them do collaborative and do group work is going to be acceptable. Again, we're working on what those guidelines look like. They're children. We're not going to have 6, 7, and 8-year-olds that we're going to bring in and tell them, don't get close to each other. Don't get close enough to talk to each other. Don't talk, we are trying really hard to balance. There's a potential threat from COVID-19, and it's a very real threat. And there is a very known threat in the psychological damage and the cognitive loss that happens when kids are out of school for 6, 7, 8 months. The loss of learning. There's a reason that solitary confinement is the most extreme form of punishment that we have. There's a reason. It's because it is damaging, and we are really, really working hard to try to find safe ways to meet kids' social emotional needs, to meet their social needs, to meet their instructional needs. So right now, that appears to be acceptable under the new guidelines. Okay, please ask this. If the time I am physically at school does not match the time my own children will be at their respective schools, is there a way to provide a service through the county or a robust childcare reimbursement plan that is more than what was offered years ago? What type of support will be given to full-time teachers who will require childcare and educational support for their own children? Should the county adopt that model? Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I do want to be clear, and I realize this chat is straying. This whole town hall is about the bond, and it's about us and our facilities. I don't have all of your answers about what school's going to look like. We're working on it. Guidance just got released, days ago, and we've had our stakeholder groups working on it. And we will get you out information as quickly as we can work through it and vet it. If you could keep looking at and talking about what's in the bond and ideas for the bond, that would be helpful. We will have hall forums on future ready instruction and what that looks like. That will likely be a future town hall. I know special education is going to be a future town hall. But right now, I can't give you all of those answers because I don't have them. I got a suggestion, looking into hospital grade keyboards that can be wiped down and spill resistant that would make disinfecting easier. Great suggestion. I've seen those that have the thick plastic over them for covers. That could definitely be something that will go in. Okay, what will the state do to count the 180 days? Right now, the state is going to count both time in school for instruction and they will count virtual instruction time. So they're 180 days. Let's say we're on site for 4 days. We are required to close down one day, physically close down the buildings one day for deep cleaning. Our teachers will send work packets or virtual work for students. That day is going to count as an instructional day. That has been the guidance so far from WVP. Some of the schools do not have the needed internet drops for the extra computer lab, desktop computers. Extra network cards will need to be purchased for them to be used in rooms with no hot drops. Very good point. Again, all of these unexpected, unanticipated costs from COVID that we have to be able to record. I got asked about, will hand sanitizing stations be replaced in classrooms even though they were just taken out? Hand sanitizing stations in every single classroom is not something that's currently in the CEFP. That the teacher committees that we have working on the return to school, that may be one of their suggestions, and then we would have to cost that out. And as a reminder to everyone, as we're talking about the bond and buildings and what we can do, we are limited in what materials we're bound in the real world as well. There are things that the last 288 gallon order of hand sanitizer was weeks in the making, and constant phone calls and pushing and calling around, and our staff is having to scramble because everyone wants the same things. So the sooner we get suggestions and start vetting them, if they're going to be things we have to order them early. We need to remember sensory students who are going to have trouble with all of the protective measures. Outstanding point, Ms. McLeod, outstanding point. Our students with autism, our students who have allergies, sensitivities. Yes, we have had a lot of discussion. Special education has its own work group in modifying the others and in working on specialized plans for them. We are concerned that some of the safety precautions are going to not be well received, and whether or not we can start working on and writing up routines, sort of like social studies routines for students that might help acclimate them. And if there are alternatives that we can use for certain students, As you know, our special education IEP teams have been meeting with parents of students with disabilities throughout the pandemic and holding virtual IEP meetings, some of which they've been modifying their virtual instruction because it wasn't working well for them the way it was constituted for everyone else. And we're going to have to do that in the return to school too. Question, is your email on the BOE website for additional suggestions? Yes, it absolutely is. I will make sure that Mr. Fogel, who is our public information officer, ensures that the information on the front flag page as well has a click through for you to click on for a suggestion. Right now there's one, hey, do you want to talk to the board and tell us all? And you could certainly use that one, but we'll also make sure there's one that clicks directly through to me for your suggestions. Thank you, that's great. So, I've gotten a couple of other questions. Outdoor time for kids, as much fresh air as they can get, kids staying in pods on the secondary, special ed services. Again, so tonight isn't about our back to school, return to school plan. We don't have that plan completely done yet, and we have stakeholder groups who are working on it. If you want to be on one of those stakeholder groups, a parent stakeholder group or a teacher stakeholder group, Mr. Sean Dilley, who is our Deputy Superintendent for Instruction, he is the one who is organizing the stakeholder groups and putting all of that data together, okay? I'll make sure that we put his email up too, so that if you're interested in serving on a stakeholder group, you can have that in. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna hit these chat comments that are about the bond. So what plan is there for getting word out on the bond? That is a great question. Bond. The bond is, number one, we'll use all the tools that we currently have for information to parents in terms of newsletters, email release, school messenger blasts, our app, our website, these town hall forums. We certainly, as you well know, we are restricted from advocating for or against the bond. That's not our role. We're not a political organization. We're an information organization. We educate people. We don't tell them how to think. We don't tell them, we don't tell them what to think. We just try to teach them how to think. So we can give information, and we will have a specific page on our website that's about the bond, and we'll continue to push that out to the public in a variety of ways. If you have any suggestions on that, we'd love to hear them. I got a question about when the board office will be open again. The board office is, people are working in the board office. It's just, you can only come to us by appointment. So if you have someone that you want to see, I was at the board office today and met with 5 different parents who had to have their work permits signed for their kids to get jobs. We're still there. We're still rotating in because we have to stay within limits, but we only do it by appointment. So if you need something, you call or email us. Are the directional stripes on the floor mentioned in the bond being suggested due to COVID or something else? If it's just a simple guidance for direction, has anyone thought about sensory pathways? You want to answer what the thinking was on that, Joyce?
That was just a COVID-19 edit, but I would be very supportive of making it educational and beneficial to the students because we won't always be in a pandemic. So that would be a very great suggestion.
Great.
Good idea.
Thank you very much. Okay. So right now it looks like I only have one new message, and and that was just a thank you, and thank you very much. We appreciate it. At this point, I will turn it back over to Ms. Skinner as the board chair.
First of all, I just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. The turnout is just magnificent. I mean, I wish we had this turnout a couple of years ago when we started this process, but better late than never. And I just appreciate all of the work that Dr. Gibson and the staff have done getting us this far, and Mr. Jones for joining us this evening. Just, you know, I think we're headed in the right direction, and we have a lot of great ideas, a lot of great plans, but just keep the ideas coming. It's not too late. We have, you know, a couple months to get this wrapped up before we have to, you know, turn the bond call in. So I think we're in a good place right now. So,
Yes, ma'am, you're the boss.
any final comments or anything that you got?
No, ma'am. A couple of people emailed me their phone number or their emails because they wanted to be considered on the stakeholder group. And I've got the chat saved. So I'm going to send those names and emails to Mr. Dilly. So thank you to everyone. And Mr. Fogle put in that he shared my email and Sean's email, that they're up on the main draft on the website so that you don't have to go digging for them. Thank you, Mr. Fogle.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you.